Spoilers ahead for the entire MCU, though I don't discuss Fantastic Four's timeline placement until the end of the video, so if you haven't seen it yet and don't want to get spoiled, no worries. I'll give a warning before we get there so you can stop if you'd like. The MCU is getting big enough my timeline video is almost 9 hours long, dangerously close to YouTube's 12-hour limit. So, like the TVA, I've decided to do some pruning to make a timeline that isn't so time-consuming. This isn't to replace that one, just a way to take a step back and focus on the bigger picture. The MCU is divided into sagas that are divided into phases. We had the Infinity Saga, now we're into the Multiverse Saga, and next up, all signs point to a mutant saga. Feige has basically said as much. Quote, "The whole story of Secret Wars really leads us into a new age of mutants and of the X-Men." So, to understand the timeline and the overall arc of the MCU is to understand 1. The journey of the Infinity Stones, 2. The intermingling of worlds in the multiverse, and 3. The various breadcrumbs that have been dropped so far pointing to the Age of Mutants. That's what we'll focus on, which means any stories that don't directly impact these arcs will be left out. The rest you can find in the 9-hour version. Now we're about to rewind back to the beginning of time, but first, working on so many complex videos involves a lot of research, which often means I have a lot of tabs open. Thankfully, I use Opera, which keeps everything simple and intuitive. Like when you have a bunch of tabs open and you're trying to remember, what was the tab I was just on? These tab traces make it easy to see where you're coming from at a glance. The darker line is the last tab I was on, and the lines get lighter as you go further back in my history. When I really want to get organized, I use tab islands. I can group tabs like this, or even use Aria, Opera's free built-in AI tool. I press Command/ or Control/ to access the command line and just ask it to group all my wiki tabs, for example. And like that, it's done. Then I can expand and collapse tab islands as needed. Aria can do a lot more than that too, like answering questions. If I ask, what's a good snack to eat before a long recording session, Aria quickly gives an answer. And that's helpful for me because this hour-long video is on the shorter side for my channel. And all that while I'm listening to music with Opera's built-in music player, which integrates with Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and more. You can detach the player and controls without interrupting your work. You can even move it outside the browser. I also love Opera's themes. There's a whole gallery to choose from, and they're totally customizable, like Midsummer or Aurora with their calming animated backgrounds that can be customized to your liking. I'm looking at my browser all day, so it's great to be able to shape it into a clean and comfortable work environment perfect for me. I recommend Opera. Check out my link in the description to try it out for yourself. And now, back to the timeline. We'll start at the beginning of the universe with godlike beings known as Celestials. The first is Arishem. According to the Eternals, he created the first sun and brought light into the universe. He built things out from there through a process called emergence. He put seeds in planets that fed on the energy of intelligent life to grow into new Celestials. They would burst out of their planets, destroying all life there in the process. But it's all part of a cycle, because those new Celestials would go on to make more stars and galaxies, leading to more planets populated by life. Without this process, the universe would fall into darkness. So in the beginning, there was Arishem. After him, there were 6 singularities, representing fundamental elements of existence: space, mind, reality, power, soul, and time. After the Big Bang, presumably set off by Arishem, those 6 singularities were concentrated into the Infinity Stones. The opening text of the Eternals tells us that Arishem was there before the singularities. Otherwise, we know nothing about them. If you're curious what the comics say, they were originally called Soul Gems, until Thanos was like, only one of them controls the soul, so maybe Infinity Gems is a better name, and later they became stones. As for their origins, before time, there was a sentient being of limitless power, but as the only living thing around, it was lonely and chose to end itself. From its ashes rose all reality, then the core of that being reincarnated into the 6 Infinity Gems. Billions of years go by with a lot of flashbacks and origins, ancient civilizations, other dimensions, artifacts, ancient civilizations located in other dimensions, etc. There are a lot, but the most important for these stories are Asgard and Wakanda. 2.5 billion years ago, a vibranium meteor struck Africa, and a few thousand years ago, Wakanda formed there. A warrior shaman ate the heart-shaped herb, a plant affected by the vibranium, giving him power, enabling him to become Wakanda's leader, the Black Panther. There's also Asgard. The MCU has not explored its origins, but powerful beings live there. Powerful enough they become the gods of Norse mythology. They look over the 9 realms, essentially 9 planets, including Earth, connected by what they call Yggdrasil, the world's tree. The Bifrost, overseen by the Asgardian Heimdall, allows for teleportation between them. The Asgardians are the first civilization we know of to interact with the Infinity Stones, other than little references like in Guardians of the Galaxy, when the Collector shows a Celestial using the Power Stone to mow down entire civilizations. But the earliest known specific reference to use of the Infinity Stones comes in 2988 BC. That's when beings known as the Dark Elves, who are said to have dwelled in the darkness before the universe began, got their hands on the Reality Stone and turned it into ether, which they tried using to restore the darkness. King Bor of Asgard defeated them, then took the ether and hid it on a distant world. Before we continue with the Infinity Stones, just a quick aside. Around 600 BC, King Bor's son Odin has inherited the throne, and with his daughter Hela, the goddess of death, they conquered the 9 realms, until a few hundred years later, after the turn of the millennium, Odin reforms and decides to focus on peace instead. But Hela never loses her bloodlust, so Odin imprisons her in Hell. With a name like Goddess of Death, not sure what Odin was expecting. Asgard's next interaction with the stones is in 1400 AD, with the Space Stone, contained inside that cube, the Tesseract. In the movies from the first Captain America, all we know is that Red Skull found it at a church in Norway in the 1940s. But Marvel has published a couple of timelines, including their recent official timeline book, which clarifies it was put there by none other than King Odin. How did he get the Tesseract? Why did he put it on Earth? No idea. The book itself says, "For unknown reasons, the Tesseract cube that contains the Space Stone is hidden inside a medieval church." Nice. As for the other 4 stones, we don't know their journeys, but we know where they eventually end up. The Mind Stone is first seen in 2012 in the Avengers. It powers Loki's mind-controlling scepter gifted to him by Thanos. The Power Stone is kept in a temple on the planet Morag, accessible once every 300 years when the sea lowers. That's where Peter Quill finds it in 2014 per Guardians of the Galaxy. The Time Stone is obtained by Agamotto, the first Sorcerer Supreme who discovered the mystic arts. He built a container for the Time Stone that'll come to be called the Eye of Agamotto, per Doctor Strange in 2016. And finally, we don't hear about the Soul Stone until Infinity War, when we find out it's kept on the planet Vormir, where its guardian explains the rules to any seeking it. Obtaining the stone costs the life of someone you love. So we know where they end up, and in each case, they've probably been there a long time. After Odin dropping off the Space Stone in 1400, let's next stop in 1571, when we meet the MCU's chronologically first known mutant, Namor. A few years before this, a Mayan tribe found an underwater deposit of vibranium. Eating the affected plant life saved them from smallpox that had been ravaging their village, but it also turned them blue and made it so they could only breathe underwater. One woman who ate the plant was pregnant at the time, and her baby was born a mutant, who will come to be called Namor. He isn't blue, can breathe above water, and has ankle wings that let him fly. It gets a little confusing to call him a mutant, because we typically think of mutants as people who get an ability from the X gene, but Namor got his from that vibranium plant, right? Or maybe the plant gave him some power, but also helped manifest what was already there, resulting in those little wings. Maybe we'll find out more in the mutant saga. In the 21st century, Earth will assemble its mightiest heroes. The first appears during World War II. Scientist Dr. Erskine develops a super soldier serum before he's kidnapped by Johann Schmidt, head of the Nazi research division Hydra. Why? Schmidt's heard tell of something left behind by the gods that can only be seized by a superior man. He doesn't know the details. That thing is the Space Stone and Odin is the god. Also, he's not wrong. It can only be held by someone superior. A mere human would be destroyed by the stone's power. In 1940, the serum turns Schmidt into Red Skull, and 2 years later he finds the Tesseract at the church in Norway and uses it to make powerful weapons. To oppose him, the Strategic Scientific Reserve, or SSR, America's answer to Hydra, rescues Erskine and gives the serum to a good guy, maybe the goodest, Steve Rogers, turning him into Captain America. And Rogers will be the only one, because a Hydra spy kills Erskine, then destroys the remaining serum. Captain America wages war on Red Skull and starts to fall in love with SSR agent Peggy Carter. Also falling is Rogers' best friend Bucky Barnes, off a train by the Danube River. He's presumed dead, but in reality he survives thanks to some experimental serum he'd received from Hydra while held captive. They recapture him and brainwash him into becoming a Winter Soldier, an assassin kept on stasis and only unfrozen on occasions when they need someone dead. Captain America's war with Red Skull ends with Rogers crashing the Skull's plane into the ocean to stop bombs from reaching the US. Rogers lives but is frozen underwater and presumed dead. As for Red Skull, he's banished by the Space Stone to Vormir, where he becomes the undead steward of the Soul Stone. As for the Tesseract, it's found by the SSR's own Howard Stark. Over the next couple of decades, SSR becomes S.H.I.E.L.D., and Stark studies the Tesseract. Where Red Skull used its power for weapons, Stark uses it in 1963 to make the arc reactor, a safer alternative to nuclear power. You know who else is at S.H.I.E.L.D.? Red Skull's scientist, Dr. Zola, recruited through Operation Paperclip, a real-world intelligence program where German scientists were recruited to the US after World War II. Another scientist with a breakthrough in the 60s? Hank Pym, who discovers the Pym particle, which can shrink or gigantify things. He does the only natural thing and becomes an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. as Ant-Man. Over 20 years later, he'll regret that, because now his wife joins Ant-Man as the Wasp, and to stop a missile, she has to go subatomic. She saves lives, but to do it, she has to shrink small enough to get through the molecules of the bomb. Small enough, Janet Van Dyne ends up stranded in the quantum realm, a place outside time and space that will become key to the Multiverse Saga. By 1989, S.H.I.E.L.D., NASA, and the U.S. Air Force have joined forces to continue studying the Tesseract under scientist Dr. Wendy Lawson. But she has her own motivations. Lawson is an undercover alien, a Kree named Mar-Vell. For 1,000 years, the Kree has been at war with the green, shape-shifting Skrulls. But when Mar-Vell realized her own Kree are fascist oppressors, and the Skrulls just want to live in peace, she defected and hoped to develop a light-speed engine using Space Stone power that could get the Skrulls to a safe, new home, away from the Krees. Working for her are 2 test flight pilots from the U.S. Air Force, best friends Carol Danvers and Maria Rambeau. One day, the Kree come for Wendy. They kill her, but Danvers manages to destroy the engine to keep it out of their hands, which releases a blast of Space Stone energy, changing Danvers' DNA to make her Captain Marvel. But before she can become a hero, the Kree brainwipe her so Danvers thinks she's one of them, and she'll spend the next 6 years fighting Skrulls, thinking she herself is a Kree. In 1995, she realizes the truth. Not only is she human, but Skrulls are actually good guys. She frees herself and gets her memories back with help from Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that experience, finding out about fascistic aliens, teaches Fury there are some pretty big threats out there. For Earth's protection, they need to assemble humankind's most abled individuals. He comes up with the Protector Initiative, until he gets a better idea from Danvers' old U.S. Air Force call sign, Avenger. He has no idea how right he is, because Thanos is already out there, actively killing people. Also, a Flurkin scratches his eye, a wound from which he will never heal. And also, Captain Marvel heads to Hala, the Kree homeworld, to end the Kree-Skrull War by destroying the Supreme Intelligence, the AI that rules the Kree homeworld. Don't worry, I'm sure that'll work out fine. Now, let's talk about the Mad Titan, Thanos. Some time ago, his home planet Titan suffered overpopulation. He suggested killing half the population at random so the other half could flourish. Thanos was ignored, and instead, they all died. Since then, he's become convinced the universe will suffer the same fate. So he's been going planet to planet, systematically killing half the population on each. When did this happen? Not that long ago, because in the late 90s, he kills half the Zehobarians, while taking one as a daughter, Gamora. The MCU Timeline book describes this as one of his earliest atrocities, so he clearly hasn't been at it for long. Soon he'll realize there's an easier way to get this all done, the Infinity Stones. If he could get his hands on all 6, he could erase half of all life in the universe with the snap of his fingers. That's how powerful they are. Like I mentioned earlier, we know he'll get the Mind Stone in that scepter. Next he'll come for the Space Stone, currently held by S.H.I.E.L.D. on Earth. But first, Earth's mightiest heroes. In 2005, Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk thanks to a Gamma experiment gone wrong. The point of the experiment, led by General Thaddeus Ross, was to try and recreate the super soldier serum, though he kept Banner in the dark, who thought it was for the advancement of medicine. In 2008, Tony Stark,
genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist,
and son of the now deceased Howard Stark, is kidnapped by terrorists, escapes by building an exoskeleton, and returns home. Changed by the experience, he puts away superficial things and focuses on doing the right thing as the superhero Iron Man. In 2010, the world finds out about gods and monsters, namely Thor and Hulk. Let's start with Thor. King Odin of Asgard has 2 sons, Thor, the god of thunder, and his younger adoptive son, Loki, the god of mischief, who has always been jealous of his older brother in line for the throne. Thor is temporarily banished to Earth for some disobedience, and when Loki tries to keep him there, the public battle is hard to miss. Hulk has his own public battle with the Abomination, one of Ross's men transformed by an experimental serum combined with some of Banner's blood. Some of that blood also drips into an open wound on Samuel Stern's head. He was a scientist working with Banner to cure him of Hulk, before Ross's guy forced him to make the Abomination. And with gamma-irradiated blood in his head, Stearns will soon have a brain with superpowered intellect. Hulk vs. Abomination, Thor vs. Loki, and Iron Man 2's story, Stark's battle with Whiplash, all overlap over the course of a week, as told by the comic Fury's Big Week, chronicling his dealing with all of this at the same time. Now the world knows about superpowered beings, and so does Fury. He recruits all of them to his Avengers Initiative, including Steve Rogers, found in the ice and thawed out in 2011. Fury rounds out the team with a couple of agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the bow and arrow wielding Clint Barton, codenamed Hawkeye, along with Natasha Romanoff, once a brainwashed Russian assassin known as a Black Widow, until Barton saw good in her and helped her defect. In 2012, Thanos finally makes his play for the Space Stone by working with Loki, who still wants power and is bitter after Thor defeated him. To help Loki obtain the Space Stone, Thanos gives him the Mind Stone containing scepter and a Chitauri army. But the Avengers are there to stop them, and they have a Hulk. This becomes known as the Battle of New York, and in the end, rather than gain a stone, Thanos loses one, because S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the scepter containing the Mind Stone. As for the Space Stone, Thor takes it back to Asgard for safekeeping. In 2013, Thor's Earth girlfriend, scientist Jane Foster, goes through a portal and accidentally comes into contact with the Ether, the reality stone hidden by King Bor millennia ago. She's infected by that Ether, and so the Dark Elves come after her. Thor's mother is killed in the process, but Thor manages to get the Ether out of Jane and defeat the Elves just like his grandpa. Then, to keep the Reality Stone safe, he leaves it with the Collector, curator of the largest museum in the galaxy, located in the skull of a long-dead Celestial. In 2014, Nick Fury, Steve Rogers, and Natasha Romanoff uncover an awful truth. S.H.I.E.L.D. has been compromised by Hydra since its inception, an effort led by Dr. Zola. Now Hydra is about to execute their ultimate plan, launch 3 helicarriers to watch over the world and kill millions at a time with the click of a button, anyone they deem a threat to their cause, people like Bruce Banner or Doctor Strange. The plot is foiled by Rogers, Romanoff, Fury, and a new friend to Captain America, veteran Sam Wilson, who pilots a personal flight suit codenamed Falcon, but it comes at a cost. S.H.I.E.L.D. is dissolved. And the emotional toll. Rogers has to fight one of Hydra's winter soldiers, the friend he thought was dead, Bucky Barnes. Though in the end, Rogers manages to get through to him a little, lighting a spark that'll one day allow Barnes to escape the brainwashing and become his old self. That same year, Thanos tries for another stone, the one on Morag, the Power Stone. After Loki's failure to get him the Space Stone, this time Thanos tries sending a Kree warlord, Ronan. Ronan does get the stone, but then goes rogue. See, the Kree aren't just at war with Skrulls, they're also at war with the Nova Empire, and Ronan figures out that by simply touching the stone to the surface of their home planet, he could wipe them all out. Except by the time he tries to do that, the Guardians of the Galaxy have formed, and they come to stop him with a dance-off. The group is made up of Thanos' own adoptive assassin daughter, Gamora, who has seen the evil of his ways. Peter Quill, half human, and though he hasn't learned it yet, half celestial, which enables him to survive holding the stone for a moment. Rocket, a raccoon with sentience thanks to a twisted scientific experiment by an alien with a god complex, his friend Groot of the Flora Colossus species, and Drax the Destroyer, who lost his family to a Thanos culling. After killing Ronan, they leave the Power Stone in the care of the Nova Corps. In 2015, the Avengers assemble again to retrieve Loki's mind control scepter. It was taken by S.H.I.E.L.D., but S.H.I.E.L.D. turned out to be Hydra, which means the bad guys have the Mind Stone. So far, they've used it to experiment on Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, twins with an axe to grind against the Avengers. Years ago, their parents were killed by bombs that bore the name Stark Industries. The experiments gave him super speed, and for her, it unlocked magical powers that were already there. Because although she doesn't know it yet, she is the Scarlet Witch, a powerful entity prophesied in the Darkhold. This is when the MCU starts to get weird. The Avengers get the scepter, then Stark and Banner turn into mad scientists. Ever since their battle with aliens, Stark has been paranoid about what else will threaten the Earth. He and Banner have been working on something, a global AI to protect the world. They don't know much about this stone, but it resembles an AI. It could be the key. Experimenting with it does create an AI, Ultron, which goes rogue and comes up with a plan to bring about world peace by killing all humans. As part of his plan, he builds himself a living vibranium body, powered by the Mind Stone in its forehead. But the Avengers steal the body before Ultron can move in, and instead they install Jarvis, a good guy AI, one Stark has been using as an assistant for years, named after his childhood butler. Jarvis wakes up in the vibranium body and calls himself Vision. Seeing the threat of Ultron, the Maximoffs put aside their differences with Stark to join Vision and the Avengers. In the end, they stop Ultron, though the battle is not without casualties. Wanda's brother is killed, and many civilians too. And some of their blood is on the Hulk's hands. Before Wanda joined up with the Avengers, she used her powers to transform Banner. When he turned unexpectedly, he couldn't control his Hulk form, and seeing how dangerous he is, Hulk exiles himself from Earth with a Quinjet. In 2016, egotistical genius surgeon Dr. Strange is in a car accident that destroys his hands, ending his career as a surgeon. So he goes in search of a way to fix them and finds the masters of the mystic arts. They teach him their ways, and just like he mastered medicine once, Now he masters magic. He even defeats a mystical being Dormammu from the Dark Dimension by manipulating time with the Eye of Agamotto, which he soon learns is powered by the Time Stone. Now, while Strange has been busy learning the ways of magic, the Avengers end up in shambles thanks to a civil war. With Ultron, General Thaddeus Ross saw the danger of the Avengers. That rogue AI killed a lot of people, and though the Avengers stopped him, they were the ones who made him in the first place. And after that, Wanda, still learning to control her magic, accidentally gets some people killed. So Ross tries to pass accords, which would make the Avengers accountable to the UN. Stark, rattled with guilt, supports it, while Rogers fears what'll happen when the Avengers and the UN disagree. Heroes are split, leading to civil war, partly instigated by Helmut Zemo. He lost his family to Ultron and hopes to see the Avengers in ruin as revenge. So he plants a bomb at the signing, frames Rogers' old friend Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, and the cherry on top, he shows Stark footage of his parents' assassination by Hydra, carried out by the Winter Soldier. The bomb at the Accords also happened to kill the Black Panther from Wakanda, leaving his son T'Challa to take over. And now, T'Challa, the new Black Panther, hates the Winter Soldier as much as Stark does. So they band together in this civil war and recruit another hero, Spider-Man. Captain America also has some recent recruits on his side. Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon, and Ant-Man, not Hank Pym, but a new Ant-Man he trained, Scott Lang. The war ends with half of them in the Raft, a special prison developed by Ross for enhanced individuals, though they're soon broken out by Romanoff and Rogers. But the Avengers are finished. After their vicious battle, Stark and Rogers are no longer speaking, but in a couple years when Thanos quests for the Infinity Stones, they will be forced to put aside their differences and reassemble the Avengers. In 2017, King Odin passes away, but first, a confession about the daughter he had before Thor, Hela, the goddess of death, now imprisoned in Hell. With Odin's death, she's freed. With her return, Thor and Loki are forced to put aside their differences and work together. Their battle with Hela sends them on a strange journey to Sakaar, a planet where they find Hulk, having the time of his life competing in gladiator matches. This is apparently where he ended up after exiling himself. He joins up with Thor, Loki, and Valkyrie, an ex-Asgardian warrior Thor finds on Sakaar, one who left Asgard thousands of years ago after her friends were slaughtered by Hela. Together, they stop Hela with a dangerous gambit, Ragnarok. She's powered by Asgard, so they evacuate as many as they can onto a big ship, destroy Asgard, and her along with it. But she's nothing compared to what comes next. Thanos tried getting the Space Stone through Loki and the Power Stone through Ronan, both failed. Now he takes matters into his own hands. He kills half the population on the Nova Empire's capital planet and helps himself to the Power Stone. He kills half the Asgardians on the ship where they evacuated, including Loki and Heimdall, and helps himself to the Space Stone. Getting the Reality Stone from the Collector is easy. The only tough one is the Soul Stone, where Red Skull reveals the price. A soul for a soul. You must sacrifice the one you love. That turns out to be his daughter Gamora. He comes to Vormir with her and leaves without her. Now he has 4 stones. On Titan, he finds the other Guardians of the Galaxy along with some heroes from Earth. Iron Man, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, who've decided on taking the fight to him. Titan wounds Stark and nearly kills him, until Strange bargains for his life by handing over the Time Stone. It seems crazy, but Strange has looked into every possible future. This was the only way that would lead to their eventual victory. The final stone is in Vision's skull. The Avengers had hoped they could remove it with help from Wakandan technology. If they could remove it, they could destroy it without killing Vision. But now, time's up, and the job falls to the only one powerful enough to destroy it, Wanda, the Scarlet Witch. It's not fair. In the time since she joined the Avengers, she and Vision have fallen in love. Nevertheless, she destroys the stone. Vision is dead, but Thanos has the Time Stone. He turns back time, then rips the stone from Vision's head, killing him all over again. Finally, with all 6 stones in his gauntlet, he snaps. Half of all living things in the universe vanish, including Hank Pym, his daughter Hope, and his wife Janet. Uninvolved in this battle, Scott Lang had worked with Hank and Hope to rescue Janet from the quantum realm. Now he's making another trip to help Ava Starr, who was turned into a sort of quantum ghost thanks to an experiment gone wrong. The quantum realm has healing particles that could help. It's a long story. The important thing is, while Scott is in the quantum realm, they vanish, so no one can pull him back out, and he's trapped there. 3 weeks later, the remaining Avengers track down Thanos to get the stones and undo the snap. But they're too late. Thanos already destroyed the stones, so Thor cuts off his head. 5 years later, a rat skitters over the quantum machine and pulls Lang out of the quantum realm. He realizes time works differently there, because it's been 5 years on the outside, but in the quantum realm, it only felt like 5 hours. Could they maybe use the Pym particles and the quantum realm to go back in time and fix things? Kind of. You cannot change the past. If you go back in time, you end up in another reality. You could stop Thanos there, but your original reality would be no less broken. But they could go back in time to another reality, borrow their Infinity Stones, bring them back to their home reality, undo the snap, then return the stones back where they came from. They do pull off the time heist, but 3 complications. 1, the Soul Stone always has a price, and this time Romanoff had to foot the bill by sacrificing herself. 2, some of the Avengers went back to 2012 during the Battle of New York to grab the Tesseract for the Space Stone and Scepter for the Mind Stone. They got the Mind Stone, but past Loki managed to steal the Tesseract, forcing Rogers and Stark to visit 1970 instead, where they could grab the Tesseract from Tony's dad, who was studying it at the time, and some Pym particles from Hank to fuel their return trip. This is important to mention because that past Loki who stole the Tesseract sets up the Multiverse Saga. More on that later. Complication 3, visiting the past in another reality means visiting a world where Thanos is still alive. Past Thanos finds out about the future Thanos that succeeded, was then killed, and now the Avengers are trying to undo his good work, not on his watch. So past Thanos follows the Avengers back to their reality and attacks with an army. But not before Hulk wields the borrowed stones and snaps, bringing everyone back except Romanoff, because no takebacks with the Soul Stone. All the heroes who come back join in what becomes known as the Battle of Earth. Humanity triumphs, but not without paying another price. Stark gets the stones, then snaps Thanos and his army out of existence. The thing is, Hulk and Thanos are powerful beings. Stark is human. That much power, he didn't stand a chance. This is how the Infinity Saga ends. Stark dies. Thor leaves in search of what comes next while leaving Valkyrie in charge of New Asgard, a home for refugee Asgardians in Norway. He'll team up with the Guardians for a bit, reconnect with Jane, who temporarily becomes Mighty Thor before succumbing to cancer, joining Heimdall in Valhalla, and Thor will adopt a girl dead thanks to a god's negligence before getting resurrected by her dad Gore, reaching eternity. That's all from Love and Thunder, and not super important to the overall arc. And Captain America goes back in time to those other realities to return the stones. But he takes a detour on his way back, spending a life with Peggy Carter and growing old, before returning home and handing off the shield to Sam Wilson, promoting him from Falcon to Captain America. Hulk, by the way, after the 5-year time jump, we learned Banner has sort of cured himself. He now retains his intellect and personality in Hulk form, though now he's always in Hulk form, until She-Hulk reveals he's built a Hulk inhibitor device, allowing him to stay human when he wants. That show also reveals that Hulk apparently had a son on Sakaar named Scar. And now, we reach the Multiverse Saga. So a quick lesson on the multiverse. According to Kevin Feige's once production assistant Richie Palmer, now executive producer, there's a distinction to be made between alternate timelines and alternate realities, both of which make up the multiverse. Let's start with the one the MCU has most concerned itself with so far, alternate timelines. Think of a timeline as a rope made up of many strands. Each strand represents a slight variation on events. You see your friend, on one strand you say hi, on another you say hey, and maybe on one you say what's up. The strands are all different, but similar enough, they're part of the same rope heading in the same general direction. But sometimes events on a strand differ significantly, enough that they branch off into their own timeline, an alternate timeline. These are universes born of a what if, and that's the basis of the animated series. As an example, take the first episode. In the original timeline, in Captain America: The First Avenger, Peggy Carter is asked to leave the room before they administer Rogers a serum, and she does. But in one strand of time, she stays. That simple choice cascades into bigger changes. The others stay in the room too, including the Hydra spy, giving him an opportunity to shoot Steve before they can begin the procedure. With him injured, Carter gets the serum instead, resulting in the creation of an alternate timeline, starring Captain Carter. What about alternate realities? Palmer and the MCU have not given an explicit definition, but my interpretation is this. If alternate timelines are strands that branch off an existing rope, alternate realities are other ropes entirely, like those other universes that have crossed over into the broader MCU at times, as in movies made by other studios. The Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man universes, the Tom Hardy Venom universe, or the X-Men universe, etc. With that out of the way, back to the Multiverse saga. Remember that Loki who stole the Tesseract during the Avengers time heist? Yeah, he wasn't supposed to do that. That change on this strand of time threatens to branch into a new universe, an alternate timeline, not if the Time Variance Authority can help it. They arrest Loki and erase this strand of time before it can become an alternate timeline. Why? It takes some doing, but by teaming up with a female variant of himself named Sylvie from another timeline, he uncovers the truth. In the 31st century, a scientist, Nathaniel Richards, will discover the multiverse and meet other versions of himself. They'll work together at first, sharing technology and knowledge, but some Nathaniel Richards are jerks, like Kang the Conqueror. Guess what he likes to do? It's an all-out war that threatens to destroy the multiverse until one Nathaniel discovers that all the tears in reality created by that war birthed a creature, Goliath, capable of consuming time and space itself. One Nathaniel will isolate the timeline, then weaponize Goliath and harness its power to prevent branching. So for example, if Loki steals the Tesseract and a branch starts to form, Nathaniel's organization, the TVA, erases it. They prune it. Why? Because a new branch means a new universe, which means a new Nathaniel Richards. Many new branches means many new Nathaniels, which inevitably leads to multiversal war, and potentially the end of all things. That's why there can only be one Nathaniel remaining, thus earning him the moniker, He Who Remains. This timeline, with no branching, is referred to as the Sacred Timeline. Learning all this, Sylvie is understandably upset. It means no one has free will, and we're all living preordained lives, erased if they deviate from the path. So, she kills He Who Remains. As if that wasn't enough, the two Loki variants also instigate a bit of a revolt in the TVA, so they'll stop pruning universes, because doing that disappears billions upon billions of people. With no He Who Remains and no pruning, the timeline starts branching infinitely. Except He Who Remains has a temporal loom with a failsafe that will automatically destroy all but the sacred timeline when it reaches capacity. So Loki has a choice. Option 1, destroy the loom to save all those innocent timelines, but risk multiversal war when Nathaniel Richards variants inevitably appear, which risks the end of everything, including the sacred timeline. Or option 2, prune those extra timelines so at least the sacred one can exist. Instead, Loki opts for a third option. He destroys the loom, and just as promised, multiversal war. Loki can see the timelines dying, except Loki is a god. He uses magic and lends his own power to keep those timelines alive. The only problem is that it's a full-time job. He can't just turn the timelines on and leave. He has to sit there and keep the power on, presumably for eternity, thus becoming the god of stories. With his sacrifice, a multiverse is allowed to form and flourish. You might have some questions. What exactly is Loki doing? If multiversal war is what kills the timelines, is Loki's power killing Nathaniel Richards variants like Kang the Conqueror? No, because we see at the end of Loki Season 2, the TVA is doing that. It becomes their mission to monitor his variants and make sure they stay out of trouble. So maybe Loki is just keeping the timelines alive. Kang can still go bad and conquer, assuming he manages to evade the TVA, but if he tries to end an entire timeline, past, present, and future, that's where Loki's magic kicks in to prevent that. You might also ask, this all sounds like it's about alternate timelines. What about alternate realities? For example, did Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe only pop into existence once Loki allowed the timeline to bloom into a multiverse? I don't think so. If you look at He Who Remains' precise language, he starts by saying he isolated our timeline. So I think there was some kind of barrier between the sacred timeline and those other universes. For example, Deadpool and Wolverine reveals that Deadpool paid Earth 616, the primary concern of the MCU, a visit in 2018, and Earth 616 is given the label the Sacred Timeline, implying that the Sacred Timeline is expressly distinct from the Fox X-Men universe. Now, with Loki's intervention, there are a bunch of alternate timelines to worry about, and those barriers are down, making the alternate realities accessible too. That producer, Richie Palmer, explained that No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness are only possible because of what Loki did. When Strange cast the spell that leads to a Spider-Man crossover, Palmer says that Strange didn't know he had to account for infinite other universes. Spells always have risks, but it became infinitely more risky now that alternate timelines exist and alternate realities are accessible. The TLDR on all this: the multiverse is made up of multiple universes. I guess I could have just said that. Anyway, returning to the Sacred Timeline. After losing Vision to Thanos, Wanda is lost in her grief. So much so, it releases power she herself is unaware of. The power of the Scarlet Witch, enough to shield her from grief by engulfing the town of Westview in a reality bubble hex that takes inspiration from sitcoms. In it, Wanda is married to Vision, and they have 2 kids, while the townsfolk are puppeted by her magic to play their roles in the sitcom. Once she realizes what she's doing, effectively enslaving a town, she ends the hex, which also disappears the Vision and 2 children she conjured. Though worth mentioning that this was all being investigated by SWORD, the Sentient Weapon Observation Response Division, and to fight it, they actually repaired Vision and brought him back to life by stealing some of Wanda's chaos magic. They reprogrammed him to kill Wanda and her Hex Vision until Hex Vision restored Real Vision's memories. Real Vision flew off on his own, so Wanda has no idea he's still out there. Also worth mentioning, Monica Rambeau, daughter of Carol Danvers' best friend Maria, is with SWORD, and repeated trips into Wanda's Hex has given her superpowers. How does this all tie into the multiverse? Well, in many other universes, Wanda has those same 2 children, so whether consciously or not, her Hex either borrowed them from other worlds or recreated 2 kids from scratch in their image. In 2024, Spider-Man faces the hologram-wielding villain Mysterio. The bad guy in his hubris gets himself killed, but leaves behind a dying gift, revealing to the world Spider-Man's true identity. The revelation throws Peter's life into chaos, and soon he'll come knocking on Doctor Strange's door for help that'll inadvertently involve the multiverse. Later that year, Emergence. You thought I forgot about that celestial inside the Earth, didn't you? Well, remember, it feeds on the energy of intelligent life, and for 5 years, there was a lot less of it thanks to Thanos. Then, thanks to the Avengers, all that life came back, and now the seed has enough energy to emerge. Except, Arishem has a bunch of synthetic beings named Eternals who are meant to ensure emergencies go smoothly, but a group of them have been on Earth since 5000 BC, and most have come to appreciate humanity. They don't want to see us wiped out, so they find a way to freeze Tiamat partway through emergence before he can blow up the Earth, leaving a giant celestial sticking out of the Indian Ocean. Countries from around the world quickly flock to this celestial island, and in their research discover a substance more powerful than vibranium, Adamantium, the same metal that covers Wolverine's bones and claws, another big breadcrumb for the upcoming Age of Mutants. Back to Peter Parker. He comes to Doctor Strange and begs for help. The Master of the Mystic Arts offers to cast a spell to erase everyone's knowledge of his identity, but things go wrong. Like I mentioned before, Strange didn't realize just how wrong they could go, because he didn't know there are now infinite timelines, and the barriers are down between realities. The spell invites to Earth 616 anyone who already knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Of course, that includes other Spider-Men, but also some of their villains. Before an infinite number of Universal trespassers can flood Earth 616, they stop it by casting another spell, one that erases everyone's knowledge of Peter Parker. He's alone in the world after that, but the alternative was potentially no world at all. But Strange is not done with the multiverse yet, thanks to Wanda Maximoff. She's still grieving for her lost children, and she's been studying the Darkhold, getting in touch with her inner Scarlet Witch. In her dreams, she sees those children every night, which means they're out there in the multiverse somewhere. After all, dreams are just visions from those other worlds. But crossing universes isn't easy, even for the Scarlet Witch. Thankfully, she's discovered a girl in another universe named America Chavez, with the ability to open portals between worlds. Wanda wants to take that power for herself, which would kill Chavez. Strange protects the girl, which takes them on a trip to other universes, including Earth 838. A world where a Doctor Strange variant tried using the Darkhold to stop Thanos, but accidentally caused an incursion, wiping out an entire universe. Trillions of sentient beings. That Strange was sentenced to execution by the Illuminati, a group of heroes including that world's Reed Richards, Captain Carter, Charles Xavier, and others. Ultimately, they stop Wanda by showing her the monster she's become, by showing her those children in another world, terrified of the Scarlet Witch. So, Wanda collapses the Darkhold castle on herself, where the Darkhold was first inscribed. She's gone, and every copy of the Darkhold in the multiverse is destroyed. Though Wanda has to come back at some point, right? I think she's probably coming back. In 2025, a girl named Kamala Khan puts on a bangle and gets light-based superpowers, turning her into the superhero Miss Marvel. But that's not all. Her friend studies her DNA and finds a mutation. And when they say the word mutation, you hear the X-Men animated theme. So there's no mistaking that this is the sort of mutation that leads to the X-Men. It's again a little confusing because just like Namor, we have an external explanation for her powers, the bangle, but also mutation. We'll see how it all shakes out. In 2026, 8 years after Hank, Scott, and Hope rescued Janet from the quantum realm, they all get sucked back into it thanks to a couple of major blunders. Janet never told them what happened to her in the quantum realm. While she was stranded, she met another stranded individual and worked with him to try and escape, until she realized that he was Kang the Conqueror, exiled to the quantum realm by other Nathaniel Richards variants. So instead, she tried her best to stop him from leaving, even if it meant stranding herself too. Should I have mentioned this earlier? No, because the quantum realm exists outside of time and space, therefore chronologically I can bring it up whenever I want. Not knowing any of this, Scott's daughter Cassie decided to build a satellite to communicate with the quantum realm after teaching herself quantum physics, thus revealing themselves to Kang and getting them all sucked into the realm. Working together and with an army of quantum realm rebels, they defeat Kang, who gets sucked into an energy core. Considering real-world events which have led to some changes in the MCU's direction, that may be the last we see of him. and it can be explained away. We can say the TVA is doing a great job monitoring his variants. Later that year, more multiverse shenanigans. You know that bangle which gives Miss Marvel powers? It's actually a quantum band. 2 of them can be used to open a portal. In ancient times, they were used to create a teleportation network of jump points. Why does that matter now? Well, remember years ago when Captain Marvel killed the AI on Hala? Turns out that was a bad idea. Since then, without their AI overlord, the planet plummeted into civil war. The Kree ended up depleting their planet of resources and pushing their sun to the brink of death. So Kree warrior Dar-Ben gets an idea. Use the bangles to open portals on other planets and steal their resources. Miss Marvel has 1 bangle, Dar-Ben finds the other, and though you need 2 for portals, she makes 1 work by overpowering it, which leads to unstable portals, which gets Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, and Monica Rambeau quantumly entangled, leading to all sorts of hijinks. In the end, Dar-Ben steals Miss Marvel's bangle, but 2 bangles are too much power. She accidentally gets herself killed and rips a hole in space-time. Monica is able to close that hole by traveling through it and sealing it from the other side, trapping her in another world. A world with a talking blue beast, one of the X-Men. Is this the X-Men universe? As in Earth 10005, the one where all the X-Men movies take place? Or just another universe that happens to have X-Men? We don't know yet. But definitely on Earth 10005 is Deadpool. Until the TVA grabs him. Recently in his world, Wolverine died. Bigger problem? Wolverine is an anchor being, which means after his death, the universe will wither and die in a couple thousand years. Even bigger problem. Mr. Paradox at the TVA is impatient and is building a time ripper to destroy Deadpool's world immediately. Even more bigger problem. Charles Xavier had a twin sister, Cassandra Nova, pruned by the TVA as a child and sent to the Void, basically a time garbage dump located outside time. She's vengeful. She decides to commandeer that Time Ripper and use it to eradicate all timelines. Thankfully, Deadpool, in his quest to save his own world, found a Wolverine from another world, and working together, they stop her. Along the way, they also make some friends in the Void from alternate realities, like Blade, Elektra, X-23, and Gambit. By 2027, General Thaddeus Ross has been elected President of the United States, with help from a scientist with superpowered intelligence, Sam Stearns. Ross publicly blamed Stearns for making Abomination back in 2010, tossed him in a secret prison, and has been using him as a captive personal think tank for years. In other news, Ross decides it's time for a new Avengers, so he tasks Sam Wilson, once the Falcon, now Rogers' Captain America replacement, with putting a team together. At the same time, Ross is trying to broker a treaty between countries. With the emergence of Celestial Island, everyone wants Adamantium. Rather than an arms race, he wants countries to cooperate and share the substance around the world equitably. As revenge against Ross for keeping him in prison, Stearns tries to sabotage the treaty. Captain America manages to keep the treaty alive, but can't stop Stearns' plan entirely. The scientist turns Ross into a Red Hulk. Captain America stops him too. Then Ross takes responsibility for his actions, landing him and Stearns in the raft, where Stearns warns Captain America that with his superintelligence, he's become aware of other worlds, and other people from those other worlds are coming soon to a theater near you. And while Captain America works on putting a team of Avengers together, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, director of the CIA, kind of accidentally puts her own together. She has a team of anti-heroes who have been doing dirty work for her. A Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff's sister, Yelena Belova, Ava Starr, the Quantum Ghost, Taskmaster, long story, and John Walker, a guy who was briefly made Captain America, then screwed it all up before Wilson took his rightful spot. When Valentina is threatened with impeachment over unethical behavior, she tries to cover it up by destroying the evidence, which means killing all those anti-heroes and the leftovers of Project Sentry, an experiment she was overseeing to make a superhero so powerful the Avengers would be made obsolete. She thought the experiment was a failure, but it turns out it worked on a guy named Bob. Through a series of mishaps, Bob's traumatic side takes over and he becomes a villain, the Void, thanks to his ability to send people into a shadow world where they face traumatic memories. But those anti-heroes save him with the power of friendship. And to divert the public from her own screw-ups, Fontaine is like, "You're welcome. I totally brought this team together on purpose. I wasn't trying to blow them up or anything. You see, these guys, they are the new Avengers." Except for Taskmaster, because she dies a few minutes into the movie when Ghost shoots her in the head back when she was still working for Fontaine, before she realized the CIA director wanted them all dead. And now, let's take a journey to another world, Earth 828. I just got back from the theater, so it's time to talk Fantastic Four. I'm about to spoil the whole movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, do yourself a favor, pause the video, go watch it, then come back. I'm going to cover this movie a little differently because the timeline placement is complex and partly unknown. First, I'll go through the major events of the movie, then I'll talk about where they might fit on the timeline. So there's another universe out there, Earth 828, where as far as we know, none of the familiar heroes have emerged. No Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, or Thor, but they do have a few heroes, 4 to be specific. The smartest man alive, Reed Richards, his wife Sue Storm, her brother Johnny, and their close friend Ben Grimm. They all go to space, come into contact with cosmic rays, and come back with superpowers. Reed is stretchy, Sue turns invisible and makes force fields, Johnny has fire powers, and Grimm is deformed into a rock man with incredible strength. Working together, they stop villains and inspire the world. 4 years later, Reed and Sue are expecting a baby. Also, the Silver Surfer shows up with an announcement. Galactus is coming to eat your planet. Who is Galactus? The movie doesn't tell us much other than he was a man once, billions of years ago, before the power cosmic turned him into a giant, powerful being with eternal hunger. Who is Silver Surfer? She once lived on a planet he chose to eat, but she successfully negotiated mercy by offering to become his herald. Now she helps him find more planets to consume while hers gets to live on. The Fantastic Four come to negotiate when Galactus senses the unborn child, and in him, the power cosmic. Galactus makes an offer. Give me the baby so he can take my place and free me from this curse. Then I'll spare your world. Of course, they refuse and ultimately stop him by pushing him into a portal to the far ends of the universe. In the battle, Sue pushes herself to the limit, leaving her on the ground, heart stopped, not breathing. Reed tries to bring her back, but can't. Their baby, on the other hand, with the power cosmic, revives his mother. That's how powerful he is. In the post-credits, 4 years later, a certain ruler from Latveria, Victor Von Doom, arrives at the Fantastic Four's home. Sue finds him crouched over her son, Franklin. Now we know Franklin is extremely powerful, but what does Doom want with him exactly? Whatever it is, likely has something to do with the upcoming Avengers Doomsday. And when does this all take place? On Earth 828, we know it's all happening in the 60s. But in Thunderbolt's post-credits scene, which takes place in Earth 616's 2028, 14 months after the end of the movie, Thunderbolt's new Avengers witness the arrival of the Fantastic Four's ship. Does that mean that not only did the Fantastic Four hop from one universe to another, but also leapt 6 decades into the future? Honestly, we don't know. My personal theory is that the two worlds, Earth 616 and 828, simply function on different timescales. So for example, when it's 1968 on Earth 828, maybe it's 2028 on Earth 616. It's easy to imagine how that could happen. For example, if humanity invented the calendar 60 years later in one world, that world's years would always be behind the others. Or if civilization as a whole rose later, leading to a delayed calendar and delayed technological advancement, etc. Think of it like different time zones, except instead of a few hours difference, it's a few decades difference. For simplicity, I'll run with the time difference assumption and talk in terms of Earth 616 years. We'll probably have to wait for Doomsday to pin this all down, but for now, just as a thought experiment, if we assume that Doom showing up at their home in Fantastic Four is what somehow leads to them dimension hopping in Thunderbolts, and that one happens right after the other, we can assume the Fantastic Four post-credits takes place in 2028. Working backwards, the Fantastic Four's post-credits is 4 years after Franklin's birth, so that puts his birthday in 2024, the same year Tiamat partially emerged and Doctor Strange meddled with the multiverse. And 4 years before that, the Fantastic Four got their powers in 2020, while Earth 616 was still down half its population thanks to 2018's snap, not to be reversed until 2023. Anyway, like I said, when worlds actually collide in Doomsday, we should get more evidence on the how and when of all this. And that's where we leave things for now. We've got 2 Avengers teams, one formed by Valentina, kind of by mistake, another Captain America is in the process of putting together. Meanwhile, Doctor Doom is up to something on Earth 828, and it'll all come crashing together December 18th, 2026 in theaters on Earth 1218. Marvel's designation for the real world according to the Google search I just did. Anyway, I gotta go finish up my Conjuring timeline, so I'll see you later. Also, special thank you to 3 consultants who helped with this video, codenamed N, M, and A. You know who you are. Thank you, and see you on the next one take.